So tell us about your experience with your dad and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I think that almost everyone here knows someone, if not in their own family, someone close who died of Alzheimer's. In my dad's case, it was later in life, so we were lucky in that way. And he was this award-winning journalist. He wrote 23 books, was the Viking sports writer. If anyone saw the game Sunday, it was like best one ever. Our quarterback had 2 days experience in one. But my dad wrote a book called Will the Vikings Ever Win the Super Bowl, which is sadly still relevant today. And he climbed mountains the world over and interviewed everyone from Mike Ditka to Ginger Rogers to Ronald Reagan. And he had an incredible life. So then to see that, of course, is always hard. And it first started showing up where he kind of stopped the car in the middle of a road when you shouldn't stop it, in like a 2-lane highway, to leaving $100 tips for some very lucky servers, to all kinds of things where his friends would call me. And we kind of went from assisted living to assisted living. And at the very end, we were in a smaller place, which was actually good for him. And it was actually at the end of the pandemic, so we got to be with him. But there was, of course, pain and angst, but there was also, for us, and I know we're maybe in a small minority of people, it was kind of this cathartic thing as well, because he was telling stories to the end, and maybe 20% of them were true, but he had a dictionary propped by his desk because we have a lot of number of Liberian community in Minnesota, and they were learning new words every single day from my dad. Most of them valid words that were not swear words, but I still remember them coming in and said, "Your dad just said he had lunch with Isaac Newton?" I'm like, "No, he did not have lunch with Isaac Newton." But he was just joyful and singing the Notre Dame fight song that he never went to, and all kinds of things, and knowing he was going to die, and he was a man of great faith. So it was kind of this cathartic end that not everyone gets to experience, because the disease can take so many ways. But it did make me think about a lot about his life and how it could have continued in a different way, but was cut short, even though he was older, by this disease. And I just think we got to do something about it. Like the research that you're all doing, I come from the state of the University of Minnesota and the Mayo Clinic, a place where the women are strong, the men are good looking, and all the medical researchers are above average. And so I have seen the breakthroughs and the work at Mayo on the human genome with Dr. Collins, and we're excited Monica got approved today. Yes, we did do something. Yeah. Yay.
Another strong
And so that is
female.
really what brought me to this. Even before my dad was diagnosed, I had met with people like in your situation. I had met with people that had little kids, and then they were taking care of their aging parents, like in the sandwich generation. And came to strongly believe not just in science and the cure, but also the help we need to give to caretakers.
We did have on our panel earlier just talking about the new guide model that's happening. And so you've talked about this, a lot of the work was done prior to your own experience, but how has that experience, the lived experience, having with your dad and your families with Alzheimer's, how does that inspire some of the work you do now in the U.S. Senate?
Well, one of the things that happened to me was as a senator, while my dad was at the beginning stages of this, in his late 80s, I'll say, but while he was at the beginning stages, no one really knew about it because there was no reason that they would. He was retired, and I would go to these meetings of like Alzheimer's groups, and as a senator to sit in, and I realized it was kind of like therapy. I'd sit there and listen to their stories, and I think that I realized that having the Alzheimer's Foundation and those kinds of groups is really important to people. I realized that there's just not enough caretakers. We know that. Some of the answer is everything from immigration reform, one of my obsessions, no great nation, has expanded with a shrinking workforce. We can try to be the first experiment, but so that piece of it, as well as compensating, helping families. We have 11 million Americans are caregivers, providing over 16 billion hours in care in just 1 year. So that led me to work with Senator Collins, a good friend of mine, on training and making sure we have grants for that to help train more workers and give them the support they need. In the past, I've worked on some tax credits and the like for family caregivers, those kinds of bills. And then just the investment in the science. When we had our last government shutdown, okay, we're not gonna have a new one, but I actually gave my salary to NIH, just as, not necessarily just about Alzheimer's, but all research to show how they were halting, trials and other things, and what that meant to people to make an example of that in their real lives. So I just believe the work we've done, that Senator Durbin has done, and others on appropriations, Patty Murray, and a number of Republicans as well, Lamar when he was there, and many others, in increasing the amount of funding. I mean, it's kind of extraordinary what we've done. We, over the last 9 years, Alzheimer's research funding has more than quintupled, over $3.7 billion, and we've seen NIH increases for 9 consecutive years. You'd like to see 10, but we got some issues over in the House. So. Anyway, I did notice you have a great panel of speakers today, and there are places in this very town where it takes 3 weeks to get one speaker. So, your election.
Yeah. Woo! It's a good one.
I couldn't resist. Okay, but so, the Senate, though, if you want to feel a little better with these dates coming up, the Senate has actually been grown-ups with Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer, and we've just passed 3 appropriations bills with the leadership of Senator Collins and Murray, and a number of us. We're working very hard on the supplemental, which with Ukraine, and you know everything going on there. So we have like 2 or 3, the defense bill, which has medical research going on at the same time. So, and I just noticed a hearing in the Rules Committee on Senator Tuberville's holds. I'm looking forward to that. We actually are getting growing bipartisan support to take that on. So there's a lot of things happening in the Senate. If you're feeling really depressed, the world around us is hard. But these real numbers, I like facts. I used to be a prosecutor. I like evidence, are real in terms of the numbers that have gone to NIH and the actual bipartisan work continuing to go on with Alzheimer's and with support for medical research in the Senate.
That's right. And so you brought up the potential government funding deadline next week, a potential for a shutdown. But do you think that the National Institutes of Health funding, NIH, will continue to increase as it has in previous years? Will that be sustained, you think, in this current environment?
I hope so, because I really see it. And again, there's things going on in the House that's hard for us to control. But when you look at it and you look at what's been going on with the Brain Initiative on Parkinson's, ALS, and Alzheimer's, I mentioned the Defense Department, the medical research programs and the like, we've really had kind of a renaissance. And I'm sure when you're out there doing the research, it feels like there's always room for more, and it's so frustrating with these grants. I know all this. I have people in my state, I hear it. But overall, we have been putting more funding into this. And I look at it as, yes, it's about saving lives and reducing all the spending for diseases like Alzheimer's, but it's also about leading the world. And you can lead the world a lot of different ways, but one of them that we have always done here in our country is innovation and ideas, and being first with cutting edge research and patents and everything. That has been a big part of innovation. One of the reasons I'm obsessed on the AI front, which can offer us, we just had a big meeting on healthcare with AI. In the Senate, we're doing a series of meetings on AI, and healthcare could be a real boon on AI, but we also have to make sure that people's ideas continue to be their own and their innovations with copyrights and patents and whatever guardrails that we need. I know you didn't ask about that, but it's something right in front of us right now, given that America has gotten to where we are in part because of people's abilities to protect their intellectual property. And we want to make sure that continues with the potentially upsides of AI that we see out there, which are very big, at the same time protecting ourselves on the national security front, spam front, intellectual property front, and then elections, which is my responsibility with the Rules Committee, is trying to make sure we have protections in place. So that is right. Oh, thank you, one person. Thank you.
whole audience. There we
No,
go.
well, I mean, just on that front, off your topic for 1 second, if
No,
we have a series of ads or videos on the internet and you don't know, there's already been one on Trump hugging Fauci that was not true.
Oh my God.
We have had one of Elizabeth Warren saying that Republicans shouldn't be able to vote. Not true. You would swear it's her when you look at it. So I've actually joined forces with Josh Hawley. Yes. He and I introduced a bill
You
with...
are known for reaching across
I am.
the aisle.
I'm number one
so
for bipartisan bills.
There you are.
With Senator Hawley and Collins and Coons to actually, within the narrow confines of the Constitution, which allows for satire and the like, to ban the deepfake ads. I just don't see, you can put little disclaimers on them, and why I don't know that it's going to be enough. And we are gathering a lot of support. Ricketts just got on the bill. It is one of those long shot moonshots, words you know, moonshot. It's a moonshot, I know, but I just think eventually we're going to have to get there because it's going to be so misleading for people to not know who their actual leaders are. And so that's one area that I see out there when I look at restraints. But let's go back to topic at hand. So.
Oh no, it's all related in some ways, right? So,
Right.
You know, you brought up AI though too, and I think what I've heard too is some of the concerns about AI is what it might do to perpetuate some health inequities, or what are the conversations like there that you're
Sure.
talking about?
And well, first of all, you know, the job issue, and sure, it's going to add jobs, but it'll also replace jobs, and how you make that transition has been a lot of the work that Senator Schumer and Young, Rounds, Heinrich, and a bunch of us are doing. So that's a piece of it. But then when it comes to healthcare, you know, algorithms can do a lot of good things, but they can do bad things, and we just got to make sure that we have fairness. That's been one of the hallmarks of the work we've done with the Affordable Care Act and some of the other bills that we passed. And the last thing we want is unfairness in where research is going. We know women have suffered from that for many, many years until like Barbara Mikulski arrived in Washington, big supporter of NIH, and said, wait a minute. So we just want to make sure that how the funding is and the healthcare goes is fair from that standpoint as well. When it comes to dementia and Alzheimer's, I mean, there's all kinds of possibilities with AI, including potential caregiving, but also help with research and just building on I don't mean like AI is going to be the caregiver, but you can imagine some uses of it that could be helpful. And the other piece of it is just what we can do with research and the like, building on the incredible work that's gone on so far. So Dr. Peterson was from Mayo Clinic, right? Exactly, and a friend. So
Did he take care of your dad?
my dad, okay, I'll give you, did you hear this story? Okay, one last great story
I
of
think
Doc.
many in this
This is a
audience know
tribute
Ron
to
Peter.
Doctor. So my dad was always very eloquent, and he was like, man, he would talk about the Vikings and sports and charm any doctor that he met with. So while they knew he had Alzheimer's, it was really hard for me to get what I needed to get him to stop driving, was actually my obsession. And and his wife wasn't really, I was stuck on me. So I finally talked to Dr. Peterson about this problem, and I said, I don't need any tests, but maybe someone down at Mayo could see him, because it's just not working, because his doctor talks to him about the Vikings the whole time. And so he says, well, no, he says, no, I'll see him. And I'm like, no, you really don't have to do that. He goes, no, I'll see him for like an hour. I'm like, okay. So I send him down there, and I tell Dr. Peterson this issue. And my dad comes back when it was much better time in the disease. He comes back and he said, that Dr. Peterson, what a first-rate guy. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, well, I can tell you one thing, I'm not driving again. I go, what? This is after 3 years. And I go, what do you mean you're not driving again? And he goes, well, I'm not driving again because Dr. Peterson told me what's going on there. He said, people like me are out there, citizens driving away, and then there's these millennials out there. These kids. Because this got it. My dad grew up in the Depression. My dad grew up in the Iron Range in a hard scrabble town. My grandpa was an iron ore miner that never even got to finish middle school because he had to go work to raise the 9 brothers and sisters, and it was a tough life, saving money in a coffee can. My dad first wanted to go to college. And so he figured that all out in like 10 minutes. And my dad goes, yeah, so Dr. Peterson, those millennials are driving. Then what happens is they're texting. And they don't look at where they're going, and they run into people like me out on the road. And then they sue us. even though it wasn't our fault. They sue us.
And we lose all.
They sue us, and then they look at our medical records, and there you go. You know, we've had some memory issues or something, and then it's we lose everything. And I'm never driving again. And he never drove again. So it's kind of an example of that, yes, all the research matters and the numbers matters, but sometimes the human touch matters most of all. So thank you.
And so a human touch for sure, as
Okay.
you've exemplified today for all of us. Thank you for your time with us.
Well, thank you, Diane.
And
Thank you.
great example.